Thank you, Steve, very much. We're moving on to the Bangor-Area market forecast with Bev Uhlenhake.
Well, hello again. It's been a couple years since I've been back here to MEREDA to do the data, and we're thrilled to be back, and thank you for having us. It's also great because no one collects this data when we don't come to MEREDA. We only do this for you. And so for those of us who are geeky types that love the data, it's good for us to have it in front of us so that we can show what we actually think to be true is. As a reminder, we haven't done the data since 2014, since the fall of 2014, so that's what that's the difference you're seeing. All right. So today I'll start out with the numbers. I'll talk about the inventory and the vacancy that we've got going on in our three sectors. Then I'll talk a little bit about trends in downtown and the waterfront specifically. I'll be sprinkling the forecasting throughout the remarks. Let's start with industrial. So our industrial market total is about 7.4 million square feet. This is an increase over the last 3 years of only about 130 square feet of new space. Realistically, the slow growth is pretty typical for our market and not surprising. What is new this year is our vacancy rates. We love that downward trend. We're now at an unusually low vacancy rate of under 5%. We're at 4.5%. This is the lowest vacancy we've seen in a decade, and we're thrilled to have a lot of space filled. However, when you have vacancy rates that low, we get to that same problem that Justin was talking about at the beginning of the day, is that our prices for leases do not yet justify new construction. It makes it very, very difficult to find new spaces for those tenants, and it's a struggle. Moving on to office, you can see here we're at about 3.2 million square feet of total space. It's a relatively static number that we've had over the last 3 years. Again, Bangor office is the lion's share of that at a little over 2.1 million square feet. For office space, just to be clear, we only track Bangor and Brewer for those. For vacancy rates, let's talk about this for a little bit. Vacancy rates, we look at our A to B plus space. Let's start out with this downtown line, which is the blue line on the sheet. So again, we're looking at the blue line. Our downtown vacancy right now is about 9.7%, and that looks to be relatively high for our market. I do want to point out that the majority of the vacancy in that number comes from 3 buildings. So it's not a wide swath of problems by any means. One of those buildings is the University of Maine System Office, or the former University of Maine System Office. Let me clarify that. It's about 40,000 square feet. It's a lovely, lovely space downtown, well renovated and well maintained. It's a great space, but its large size and layout have proved to be a challenge for potential users. The higher vacancy rate, though, does make it a little bit easier for us to locate users and to move people around a little bit. So even though the vacancy rate's a little bit higher than we'd like to see it, the activity has also been good. So the downtown's doing relatively well. The red line here represents our suburban market space. And we're currently at a 9.3% vacancy rate. This is extremely high for our suburban market. Our suburban market is generally pretty tight, well below 5%. This one's also skewed by a couple buildings, and in particular, it's 2 buildings. One of those is the Verizon call center. Again, it's about a 40,000 square foot building, beautiful building, but it's now vacant. When we take those 2 buildings out that we're struggling with, the vacancy rate is really only about 1.9%. So it's very, very tight, but our tenants in our office market, in our suburban office market, are incredibly price sensitive. And so we're not going to see new construction because the lease rates just don't justify new buildings. Vacancy in the medical office. The medical office is our green line here. We're down at about 1%. This is pretty typical for us. We've got 3 large medical users in our network or in our market. They continue to keep the occupancy rates pretty high. All right, let's move on to retail. There's a story in retail. Okay, starting out on an inventory sheet, you'll notice that the Bangor Mall area represents about 50% of our total inventory of 6.4 million square feet. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about that blue chunk. That's the Bangor Mall area, so that's the Bangor Mall proper, as well as the surrounding area as a whole. You may or may not have heard about what's happening at the Bangor Mall. I don't know how much you pay attention to it, but it's incredibly important information. I'm going to be very clear about what I want to say, so forgive me, but I will actually read the next chunk here. I'm going to remain on script. The Bangor Mall, owned by Simon, has been in a headline for much of 2017 and will continue to be in 2018. I'm going to first start with what's been reported either in the press or as public information. Point 1, 120,000 square foot Macy's has closed. It was the prime Bangor Mall anchor, owned by Macy's, not by Simon, who owns the rest of the mall. That building is currently under contract to an out-of-state investor who's buying a group of vacant Macy's, and there is no immediate user known. 2, the 106,000 Sears is now slated to close in the first quarter of 2018. The auto center will remain open. 3, 2 of the other Bangor Mall anchors, JCPenney's and Dick's, continue to remain open. However, I will note that the lease on the Pennies has been reported to have only a couple years left on it. 4, the interior malls continue on but look quite different than they did just 3 years ago when I was last here talking. Many of the nationals have closed or relocated, and we're hearing about those on a regular basis more and more. There are a number of local businesses, including some local retail, things like a church and its accompanying daycare, fitness facilities, and others that you don't typically see in a mall. And even with those, there's still significant vacancy in our mall. Finally, it's been reported in the press that Simon did not make its $170 million, that's an M, so its $70 million balloon loan payment in October of this past year, and the company servicing the loan is classifying the property as being in foreclosure. Not great news. So, those were the facts. Now I'm going to say out loud what we expect to see. I'll tell you what I wrote yesterday. Yesterday I said, we expect to see a foreclosure process on the Bangor Mall that will play out in the first quarter of 2018. Guess what was reported in the Bangor News today? We're going to see a foreclosure process play out in the Bangor Mall in the first quarter of 2018. So that has gone from speculation to fact. We expect the redevelopment and repositioning of the Bangor Mall to play out over a number of years. This is but a chapter in what will happen here, with an unknown number of chapters yet to play out. So, I'll move on to the vacancy chart. We're going to talk first about that green line, the green line being the Bangor Mall area. And you'll notice that I conveniently left off where we're at right now. It works when you just don't say what the number is, right? With significant vacancy at the mall itself, and we also have a vacant Kmart that's relatively freshly vacant of over 100,000 square feet, that green line would go off the chart. What I do want to let you know, and what's important for you all to understand, is that when we remove the Bangor Mall itself, so Bangor Mall proper, not the area around it, and the Kmart, if we take those two numbers out, the overall vacancy rate in the area surrounding the mall is a pretty healthy 5.8%. That's a functional vacancy that we would expect to see in this market. So the mall area, not the mall itself, the mall area is really doing okay, and hopefully will not be negatively impacted by the events that play out at the mall itself and other national trends in retail. So with that, let's take a look at the other two sectors within retail. First, the red line here is our secondary market. That's our neighborhood centers of Broadway, Union Street, Wilson Street, et cetera. Those areas have been and continue to be stable for retail. And the blue line is downtown and on a good trend. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. Both of those areas are holding tight at around 6.5%. All right, let's talk trends. This is the fun stuff. First, we'll focus on downtown and then the waterfront, where we're seeing exciting development that I'm looking forward to showing you pictures of. Downtown has become an attractive place to live, to eat, to partake of cultural events, and of course, it's a great place for beer. Who doesn't like beer? This is actually a photo of Orno Brewing Company, which happens to be about half a block from our office. It's really nice, not that I would know. What's good about what's happening downtown is the developments are spreading out from Main Street core and going and expanding the vibrant part of downtown a few blocks in every direction. We're starting to see beyond Main Street, which is great. One of the more exciting developments in the last year has been the redevelopment of the Nichols Block. It's a full city street of 6 adjacent buildings on Exchange Street. This was purchased by Adam Moskowitz, and he is in the process of redeveloping this. It is bringing, hosts right now a new arts collaborative called the Bangor Arts Exchange. The third floor ballroom has been renovated as a small venue for performances and special events. It's a lovely space. I encourage you to attend. The block also offers a mix of offices and retail, including another beer tasting room, because we like those, with more mixed uses to come. Now, moving on to the waterfront. Of course, you've heard about the Hollywood Casino. This was built in 2007 along with its hotel and racetrack. Darling's Waterfront Pavilion, which can accommodate up to 15,000 people. It's an award-winning open-air amphitheater. Waterfront Concerts just recently signed a new deal with the city of Bangor, so that their location on the waterfront has been solidified for the next decade, which is great news for all of us. And the Cross Insurance Center, which was built in 2013. The venue's just celebrated its 1,000th event, and I wasn't going to go here, but Paul Peck opened the door for me. We all love being in here in this room of 900 people. In just a couple weeks, the Bangor Chamber of Commerce is going to have its annual dinner. We get 1,200. We sit down, we eat. Bangor may have a mall that's struggling, but we still have our mojo. So we're thrilled. Next, new development. Under construction right now is yet another transformational development for the corridor and for the city, and this is Bangor Savings' new consolidated headquarters on our waterfront. The campus will encompass over 150,000 square feet of office space for Bangor Savings in 2 buildings. Here's the first one, which is a renovation of an existing building, and here's a prototype or a plan of the next one. At its completion in the first quarter of 2019, they expect 370 employees right on campus with the room to accommodate up to 480 employees over time. It also includes a parking garage of about 450 spaces. There'll be roof decks overlooking the Penobscot and waterfront concerts in case you want to go up there and watch the concert. It'll have an on-site cafe and a fitness center. Designed to minimize their carbon footprint, the development will also host a 680,000 kilowatt solar array on top of the garage and over 90 geothermal wells. This is really a huge investment in the waterfront by Bangor Savings Bank. So thank you to Bob Montgomery Rice and his team for continuing to invest in Bangor. They are now a statewide bank. They could have gone anywhere, and they chose to invest right in our downtown, and we're thrilled. The development will complement the entertainment venues along the waterfront already existing, as the garage will be available during concerts and festivals. And I think you can see the entertainment sector as sort of that first wave of development. This development and its new home, Bangor Savings Bank's new home, will solidify the waterfront's draw for further development as well as stabilize the traffic flow beyond just the events. So that's a little bit about what's happening in Bangor. Even with the unknowns happening at the Bangor Mall, I will say that the market remains generally stable and healthy. We expect continued incremental growth into the future, and we're happy to be here. Thank you all very much.